Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to what is 100 years of translation research at UCLA. On and off over the years, but we started 100 years ago. So just a few words before introduce our speaker today, Michael Schneider. First of all, we acknowledge the Gabrielino Tongva people as the traditional land keepers of Tavonga, especially as a land grant institution. And we also acknowledge funding from the Urban Planning Department and the Harvey Perloff Endowment, which supports this lecture series. So who are we? We're the Institute of Transportation Studies at UCLA, which I think you know if you are here, but you may not know that we started in the 1920s, initially focused on streets, and we're still talking about streets and maybe more of the all part rather than just the streets part today. Since the Second World War, we've expanded our remit, and even more so in the since the 1990s, with new people joining, myself, Mike Mamble in the back, and an increasingly large engineering program, which is why we're here in the engineering building today. And we also established this year a new center for parking policies. So especially those of you joining us online on YouTube, we really appreciate like helping us to start this, to develop an endowment in memory of Donald Shoup, and carrying forward and building on the work that he kicked off. So today I am very pleased to turn it over to Michael Schneider, who not have a car. He traded in his car for a bicycle more than a decade ago. But more than that, he has been one of the foremost advocates for changing transportation and infrastructure in LA. And in particular through helping pass Measure HLA in 2024, also working in Sacramento. And so I am going to say more about Michael's work because I think he can do this much better himself. So please join me in welcoming Michael Schneider. Oops.
Thank you. While they're getting my slides up, how many people are from LA? Raise your hand. Okay, a few. How many of you that are from LA used a bicycle to get around, or use a bicycle to get around? Okay, that's about a third. From the people that aren't from LA, how many of you guys use a bicycle, public transportation, walk, use something other than a car today to get around? All right, friendly audience. So I'm Michael Schneider. I'm born and raised in LA. I grew up just a few miles from here. And I didn't realize that the title of this was 100 Years of Transportation, but that's perfect because I want to show you what your campus looked like 100 years ago. Do I need to stand there? Okay. This feels so formal. All right. Is this good? Okay. 1 second. Okay. So this is what your campus looked like 100 years ago. You might recognize some of those buildings still. And this is what LA's public transportation looked like 100 years ago. You may have seen this map. This was the largest rail system in the world, larger than the UK, London, New York, anywhere. And it was very extensive. It went to Orange County, Riverside, and all sorts of great things. This is what it looked like. This is a red car crossing over the LA River, Echo Park, Beverly Hills, and just down the block, Westwood and Santa Monica. LA wasn't unique 100 years ago. New York City had a already pretty built out public transportation system, looked like this. This was Chicago, looks very similar today. What LA is unique about is we did this. In the early 1960s, we completely dismantled this system. So we took the largest rail system in the world and snatched defeat from the jaws of victory and completely gave that space over to cars. And to put a fine point on it, this is my favorite example. That same shot from Beverly Hills and Santa Monica Boulevard now looks like this. You can kind of see the angle where the tracks used to be, the angle of the edge of the buildings. And then these are free 2-hour parking garages. That's such an incredible symbol, right? Don't take public transportation, drive your car, and we'll make it easy to park, is what we became. 100 years ago, these were the roads in the LA area. You'll notice there's no freeways. There's just major streets. And of course, we built this. And you've probably seen some of the impacts of the freeways, but we really did tear through communities. I'm sorry about that right photo, it's a little blurry, but the point stands. There was a community there, and now there's a freeway. And on the left-hand side, of course, we bulldozed everything to make the 101. Here's City Hall. Then and now, you can see that same courthouse right there. And of course, it led to this. Steve Martin made a movie called LA Story decades ago, and it became a meme. His friend asked him, we're going to go over to a friend's house. Why don't we walk there? And he burst out into laughter saying, who walks in LA? Nobody walks in LA. By the time I was born in the early 80s, this was what the freeways looked like. Smog alerts are pretty common. And I wanted to show you this fairly douchey picture of myself about 20 years ago, because I wanted to emphasize how unbelievably obsessed with cars I was. The native LA brain and cars and how cool they were and everything else really, really got into me. They were so into me that as I did better in life, I started importing cars. This is me and my cousin in Germany about 20 years, a little less than 20 years ago, picking up a BMW, driving way too fast on the Autobahn. And so fast, actually, that we got pulled over. It is possible in Belgium. Those are actual photos of the police. And I was just living how LA intended for me to live. I drove everywhere. I didn't care about bike lanes or bus lanes or pedestrian space. I just wanted to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible with no traffic and have free parking on either end, which I think is how most people are, fortunately, in the city. I lived like this for many years until the financial crisis of 2008. I was a tech and startup entrepreneur. It killed one of my companies, it nearly killed another. And I was down on my luck, and I had to give up my big, expensive BMW that I couldn't afford anymore. And I borrowed my grandfather's car, which is this really cool looking Mercedes, but unfortunately, it was in the shop more than it worked. And most of the time, the car looked like this, getting checked and fixed. And I started to lose hours, days, and even weeks without having a car. There was no Uber or Lyft. I didn't have a lot of options. And so starting around 2012, my then girlfriend, now wife, got me this kind of cool used Schwinn bike from the 70s. It's a 5-speed. It was incredibly heavy, made of steel. And I loved it. And I started to use the bike to get around. I challenged myself the first week just to get to my gym and back. I think it was about 2 miles. Then I would go a little bit further. I remember the first day I went from near West Hollywood to Santa Monica for lunch, and I thought, this is completely crazy and I'm going to die. And I arrived and I was exhilarated and I made it back home and I found a better way to live. I kept pulling the string. 4 years later, this is me with 2 of my kids on the bike, starting to get heavy in different ways. I had upgraded the bike, but now I have 2 kids on it. And in 2019, I started biking to and from the airport. This was my setup at the time. I had a Burley trailer for my suitcase, and I would bike away. It would take me an hour door to door, and it was a hell of a lot more pleasant than an Uber. My bike kept getting upgraded. We had another kid, so I now have an electric cargo bike that I took here this morning that fits 3 kids. It's so fun to ride, and it's frankly so much safer because it has a 28-mile-per-hour speed limit, and I'm going much closer to the speed of cars, has a horn on it, has suspension, and it's basically become my SUV. I rode it here this morning, and I really love this bike. In 2019, I reached a breaking point. I was really frustrated with how unnecessarily unsafe LA streets were. I didn't know anything about the local political system. Who's making these decisions? Why isn't there a bike lane? Why isn't there a bus lane? Why isn't that a pedestrian plaza over there? And so I did a few things all in 2019. I ran for and was elected to my neighborhood council. I was reelected twice, and I chaired our transportation committee. I joined LA's Bicycle Advisory Committee, Metro Sustainability Council, our county transportation agency, of course, and I started Streets for All. So why Streets for All in its initial early days was a political action committee. I came to the conclusion that our streets and sidewalks are so shitty because we have politicians that don't prioritize them, or that think making them for anything other than cars is going to piss people off and therefore they won't get reelected, and they just kind of shied away from it. So we started with supporting candidates that shared our vision of more multimodal streets in Los Angeles. For those of you that haven't looked at or seen LA's mobility plan in a while, this is what the protected bike lane network looks like for the city and the valley. It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than today. Unfortunately, we've implemented about 6% of it. This is what the bus lane network looks like across the city. Again, very little has been implemented. And so there's 15 council districts. There's not really one mayor in Los Angeles. You've probably heard this before. There's kind of 15 mini mayors that each decide what does and doesn't happen in their district. That makes it very hard. Why does a bike lane magically end on a street? Who knows? Well, it's because the council member on this side of the street was okay with it, and that's the border, and on that side, they vetoed it. When I started Streets for All, we had one ally on LA City Council, Councilmember Mike Bonin at the time. Everybody else was kind of against this stuff. And they were against it because of NIMBYs, because of people that just fought change. You're going to make my life worse. If you take away parking, you'll kill businesses in the area. You're going to make my commute worse. You name it. You've probably heard it all. And politicians were responding by killing road safety projects. So I want to show you our very first political ad. David Rue, for those of you that remember, was a councilman for District 4, LACMA, that kind of area. And I was on the neighborhood council at the time, and he killed a road safety project on 6th Street after a woman was killed. And I was really pissed off about that. So he became our first target when we started the PAC, and I wanted to play you this ad.
Where does Fix the City's money come from? Because your lawsuits impact the entire city and its landscape, so I think it's a fair question to ask. Where are you funded?
No, it's not a fair question.
It's not?
No, it's none of your business.
You don't think it's the business of the people who are going to be impacted by the lawsuits that you're filing?
No.
Thank you so much.
This was Nithia's first election, and we were excited to support her. She won, and of course, she just won re-election. Fix the City, or in the advocacy world, we like to call Fuck the City, loves to sue the city over good land use and transportation policy, and uses that money that they shouldn't have gotten, that $3 million from Westfield, to do that. So we thought it was important to expose that. Hugo Soto Martinez in 2022. So going back, when Nithya won in 2020, that was the first time that an incumbent had been defeated in 17 years. It was unheard of in LA. Hugo Soto Martinez, 2 years later, defeated Mitch O'Farrell. Here's an ad we did for him.
In 2015, Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell voted for a plan to make LA streets safer for everyone. But in 7 years, he got less than 1% done. Mitch's failure to act has made our streets more dangerous for everyone. Since he took office, almost 4,000 pedestrians and cyclists have been killed or injured in his district. That's unacceptable. Hugo Soto Martinez is the leader our district needs. He'll take action on housing, transportation, and public safety, starting on day one. It's time to ditch Mitch. And vote Hugo for City Council on November 8th.
I want to emphasize to you kind of how revolutionary this was for LA. No one talked about these issues before we came along from a political point of view or local election point of view. And it worked, and it is working, I should say. This year, we have 7 sitting council members that we've endorsed and supported on LA City Council, and this is an election year, and we think we'll get to a majority this year. So we made a lot of progress. In 2021, we were inspired by a campaign that our friends at Transportation Alternatives did in New York City called NYC 25 by 25. It was a challenge to elected leaders to reapportion 25% of public space back to people by 2025. And here's the adaptation we did for LA. Changing culture is really hard. People don't like change, especially in their day-to-day life. And so we started to do a series that we just called a culture change series of different ways people lived and different viewpoints on the same issues. So let me give you an example. This is my good friend Taylor Nichols, a big bike advocate, in The Impatient Driver.
Traffic is killing me. I'll be there in a second. I'm gonna cut through this neighborhood. So I got a ticket last week, man. Yeah, speeding. $200. Oh shit. Look at this. I wish you could see this. Hey, come on, move over. Move over. Hey, I'm slowing down here. Move over. I pay taxes here, huh? You know, sometimes I just wanna... Ah! Stay on the sidewalk where you belong. The streets are for cars. You're killing me. Come on.
So my then 7-year-old gave a very appropriate look to being honked at, I think. But it shows the bigger point that people in cars often treat pedestrians and cyclists like they would never treat perhaps a little kid or their own family member, and we're desensitized to it. So we really wanted to make that point. We also wanted to show that this stereotype that if you can afford a car, of course you have a car in LA because it's the best way to get around. And listen to an attorney that bikes to court.
This is my bike. I've had it about 3 years. It's very near and dear to my heart. My name's Michael. I live in Mid-City, and I work as an attorney in Koreatown, and I'm often in court in downtown. I use the bicycle as my main mode of transportation. I love that I get out in the fresh air. I'm not worried about finding parking spaces or having my car be broken into or having to worry about repairs or filling it up with gas. All of those things are an incredible weight on one's mind, and not having to worry about those things has been incredibly freeing for me. I love the feeling of the wind in my face. I love getting exercise. I don't need to drink coffee in the morning. I get up and I get on my bike, and that's what wakes me up. You see the sights, you see what's actually happening in your community. You're a part of it in a way that you're not when you're just passing through it in an automobile. When I'm on my bike, if I see a new bakery or a bar that I've never been to, I can just stop, lock my bike up, go in. If I was driving a car, I probably would say, it's too hard to find a parking spot, I'm just gonna keep going home. I could drive a car if I wanted to, and I did in the past, and I feel like I've broken myself from that shackle, and my life is better for it. And when I bike to work, I get to park like a rock star. Everything about it is great. Try getting on a bike. You'd be surprised how good you feel.
So here, of course, we tried to take all the common objections on why you couldn't bike and put them in a video. We've also really reached for the stars on some projects. Who's been on the 90 freeway near Marina del Rey? A couple people. It is the shortest freeway in California. It's the least traffic freeway in California. We looked at this and we said, maybe there's a better use for this space. It's a lot of space. Maybe we should build housing. Maybe we should build bike lanes. Maybe we should build a park. And what's amazing is it was supposed to be 40 miles long. It's supposed to connect all the way to the 91. And due to community opposition, that was killed in the 60s, and this 3-mile stub is what we got left with. So this was our vision. We collaborated with SWA, a local landscape architecture firm, to re-envision the 90. What could it be? And we came up with this idea we called Marina Central Park, full of green space, 4,000 units of housing, walking paths, bike trails. Centinela Creek is right there, but you'd never know it because there's a highway there. And just a much, much better, more efficient use of space. We applied for a $2 million grant through Reconnecting Communities under the Biden administration. We made it to Pete Buttigieg's desk, which I was very excited about. But the mayor, who previously gave us a letter of support at the last minute, thanks to NIMBY opposition of even studying the idea, changed her position. Councilwoman Tracy Park in CD11 wrote to Pete Buttigieg opposing it. And Supervisor Holly Mitchell had a competing project in the same district, and ultimately we didn't get the funds. But I still want to do this once we have a different mayor and councilwoman in CD11. Anyone know who Ed Begley Jr. is? Actor, So Ed is a huge bike advocate. He's been biking to the Oscars and the Academy Awards since the 70s. He had a hierarchy in his house with his kids growing up. You had to walk. If you couldn't walk, you had to bike. If you couldn't bike, you had to take the bus. And if you couldn't do any of those, you had to sit at the table and explain to him why you couldn't do any before you got the car keys. So this is me, this is Ed and I running his errands in an electric cargo bike to prove you don't need a car for your day-to-day stuff.
Hey, it's Michael Schneider from Streets for All. A friend of mine asked me to help him run some errands today, and I thought it'd be perfect to pick him up in this electric cargo bike and prove that you do not need a car to run errands around the city of Los Angeles. I know you care about the environment. This is the most environmentally friendly vehicle possible.
You got the right guy. I love bicycles.
And I even brought you a helmet.
Fantastic. I must confess, I haven't been in one of these yet.
All right.
Oh!
You're a longtime environmentalist. What made you connect cars and transportation and the impact of that on the environment?
1970, I was just worried about the quality of the air. It hurt your lungs to run from here to that car. I got involved. I rode my bicycle, and I not only liked it for cutting down the air pollution, but it was so inexpensive to ride my bike. Any way we get people riding a bike, I love it.
So you're 6'4", and you're sitting in the bucket of an electric cargo bike.
This is something unusual to me even, Michael, so you know it's unusual to everybody else. Because that's another excuse. Yeah, I'll ride a bike, but I can't go pick up a week's worth of groceries in. You can pick up a month's worth of groceries in this thing.
That's a really good idea. Starting off, we could go ahead and go to the supermarket and get you what you need.
Always a great parking spot when you're riding a bike.
There sure is.
See you in a minute.
Hey, how'd it go in there?
Very easy.
Right now, there is this misperception. Bicycles like this are for richer people. And I've never understood that perception because there's no insurance, there's no gas, there's no parking fees, there's none of that on a bicycle. But why do you think that misperception exists?
There's bargains out there. I don't know why people think it's more expensive, more troublesome. It is simply not.
Well, I think we're at coffee. So Ed, in the 1960s, over 60% of children biked themselves to school. And today, that number is less than 10%.
We have to give parents and kids every opportunity. More bike lanes, more bike paths, good places to lock up a bike, a nice safe area. That's all very doable stuff. A lot of bang for the buck.
One of the interesting things about Hollywood is the way cars have been portrayed in TV shows and movies compared to bicycles.
The bicycle is always portrayed as the mode of transportation for losers. And it has to be otherwise, because it is for winners. Ironman contest winners and lots of other people who have great stature ride a bike. I need some flowers.
Let's get you out of the doghouse.
I don't know that it'll get me out. Maybe I'll be in the work release program. Thank you. Let's go stop at North Hollywood Hardware. I know they're going to have just what I need. I love supporting the local merchants. They're always so great about allowing me to ride my bike here. Well, Bruce, thank you so much. You always have what I need, pal.
So Ed, you and I just went to the grocery store, we went to a flower shop, went to a hardware store. We did all on a bicycle.
You can do so many things on a bike. I've been to the Oscars repeatedly on a bicycle. Whatever we can do to give people safety and realistic peace of mind, I think we need to do it today. Michael, I've been riding a bike for 68, maybe 70 years. So I love bike riding. It's the best way to get around. Thank you for promoting it and all that you do for bike riders.
Well, thank you, Ed. At Streets for All, we're trying to change culture in Los Angeles, get more bike lanes, get more bus lanes, and show people that you don't need a car to do your everyday errands, which I think we've proven today.
It's the biggest bang for the buck.
Absolutely.
Combat climate change. Nothing is better.
Absolutely.
Thank you, pal.
Thank you.
I should mention every video I've shown you is 100% done by volunteers. We have so many volunteers. They work on Hollywood movies during the day. They work on our stuff at night. And we're very blessed with that and grateful. A few other things. During COVID, we championed the city implementing slow streets, some of which have been made permanent today. We wanted to give people a way to get outside, ride a bike, take a walk, and still keep that 6-foot recommended distance. In 2019, our very first advocacy project, which is still ongoing, Venice Boulevard for All, is trying to make Venice Boulevard LA's first complete street from the ocean to downtown with protected bike lanes, dedicated bus lanes, pedestrian improvements, trees. And we were very excited. COVID derailed it a little bit, but finally in 2023, 3 miles of it were opened.
The 4 miles opening today are a game changer for Los Angeles, including the first dedicated 24/7 bus lanes outside of downtown LA. LA's first protected east-west bike lane corridor.
You know that the West Side has historically been a politically difficult place to put bus and bike lanes in the ground. But things are changing. This is a day of much celebration, but also a reminder of our duty to continue building a city that serves everyone.
Let us now officially cut the ribbon to commemorate this project.
We're now fighting to get those bike and bus lanes all the way to the beach and all the way downtown LA. Very close to home, you should know about a project we're pushing called Westwood Connected. So we looked at the area around UCLA and we saw a lot of gaps in the transportation system. The bike lane on Wilshire isn't protected and ends at Selby, doesn't pick up again. Westwood Village doesn't have a bike lane to get to UCLA between UCLA and the Expo line. The bus lane stops and starts. That was due to NIMBY opposition at the time. So we looked at this and we said, we really should do something holistically better. This is our vision for Wilshire Boulevard with a two-way protected cycle track and dedicated bus lane near the 405. For Westwood Village, we want a protected bike lane on Westwood Boulevard. And I'm so excited, you probably already know this, but just in case you don't, Councilmember Yaroslavsky picked up on this idea. It now has funding and it should happen before the Olympics between campus and the Expo line stop. And a scramble crossing at Strathmore. So holistically, we think this would be a lot better for campus. We're pushing a 27-mile bus rapid transit system with dedicated bike lanes between Pasadena and Long Beach. We call it Hill to Sea. We're also very active in Sacramento. Sometimes to change things in Los Angeles, the quickest way to do it is to go to the state because the local politicians can't get out of their own way. These are some of our bills from last year. The green checks mean the governor signed it and it is now law. The red X means it died in committee. He didn't veto a single one of our bills last year. So we got 5 bills to his desk and he signed all 5. One I'm especially proud of, SB 79, which you may have heard of or heard of the controversy around it, overrides local zoning and allows for denser transit around transit stops. Really, really important for our transportation system's health and for cheaper housing. We also started a campaign called Destruction for Nada. There's a 10-minute video. I'm not going to make you watch it today, but if you're curious, it's destructionfornada.com. We spend billions of dollars a year widening highways in the state of California. We spent over $1 billion widening the 405 20 years ago, and it took 9 months for traffic to get worse. Induced demand's real. Never solve our traffic problems just by building more road space. And so we're trying to get Metro LA to stop widening highways in LA County and eventually to kill highway widening statewide. On the more drier side of things, but still really important, for the first time in 20 years, our city is considering reforming its charter. Its charter is like LA's constitution, basically. And it hasn't been done since 1999. The city internally, the city of LA is quite broken in the way it manages money, effectuates projects, organizes itself to deliver projects. It's why things take so long and cost so much. So we have 4 proposals we've been pushing. Right now, I'm not super optimistic. There's a lot of corruption going on and the Board of Public Works is showing up and kind of running the show, which is not real reform, but we'll see. If you care about this or want to get involved, you can go to charter.streetsforall.org. By far, probably the most important thing Streets for All has done, and I think I've done doing this work, is measure HLA in 2024. This was a 3-year, $4 million effort to force the city of LA to implement its own mobility plan anytime road work is done and make streets safer. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about the campaign, play you a few quick videos.
We're here today for a very simple reason. Too many people are dying on the streets of Los Angeles. This campaign is about improving safety for everyone in Los Angeles, no matter how they choose to get around. Last year, 176 pedestrians, nearly one every other day, were killed on Los Angeles streets. Unfortunately, the city's only implemented 5% of its plan in 8 years, and people are dying as a result. We're simply asking that the city implement its own plan anytime they do routine street maintenance.
The mobility plan was a statement of our city's values. It was a citywide commitment to safety.
Angelenos deserve to feel safe on our roads, and it's important that we invest in the infrastructure that will foster safe streets for all.
Our kids can't afford to continue to wait years and years for the improvements that will make their streets safer and more walkable.
My kids go 2 blocks away from school, and now they can't even walk to school because they're scared to go. So we're asking for streets to be safer.
We've got a plan to make Los Angeles safer. Why don't we just implement it?
I enthusiastically support Measure HLA because it is acting with the urgency that this city requires to make our city streets more safe.
It'll send a clear message that the residents of Los Angeles are ready and committed to making our streets safer and our communities more livable.
We are looking forward to March 5th, the day Angelenos can rise up, say enough is enough, and vote yes on Measure HLA. We had 7 council members endorse Measure HLA. That's very unusual because usually city council members don't endorse something that's going to take away their own power and restrict their own ability to block projects. So that was really exciting. I wanted to show you 2 of the ads. So you'll notice in my remarks and others, no one said bike lanes, no one said bus lanes, no one said any of that stuff. We focused on pedestrians. Why? Because everyone's a pedestrian sometimes. Even if you drive everywhere, you're a pedestrian maybe for 10 seconds, but you're still a pedestrian. And so I wanted to show you 2 of the ads that we created that really helped get the campaign passed.
More pedestrians are killed in Los Angeles than anywhere else in America. We can change that with Measure HLA. Measure HLA would implement the city's own road safety plan, creating crosswalks and safer spaces for pedestrians, building bus and bike lanes to create safer commutes, speeding up emergency response, reducing pollution and improving air quality, all while saving money and lives for a safer, healthier, and more livable LA. Vote yes on Measure HLA.
Here's one more.
LA needs safer streets. Pass Measure HLA. With this editorial, the Los Angeles Times endorses Measure HLA, saying voters have the power to make Los Angeles' streets safer. Measure HLA is endorsed by the LA County Democratic Party, LA Unified School Board, Federation of Labor, Federation of Business, the Sierra Club, Streets for All, and more than 50 organizations asking for safer streets. Vote yes on Measure HLA for safe streets in Los Angeles.
So I was really nervous on election night. Our polling was pretty good, but the firefighters union at the last minute, about a month before the election, all of a sudden opposed it. They didn't oppose it through the ballot. They weren't officially on the ballot in opposition, but they held a press conference. Tracy Park was there. And they basically said, if you do this, we're not going to be able to put out fires. If you have a heart attack, we might not get there in time. They ran a fear-mongering campaign. And so I kind of had this pit in my stomach. Like someone told me once, there's 2 people in politics you never want to go against, teachers and firefighters. And so here we had the firefighters union, but people really didn't distinguish that between the union and the firefighters fighting against HLA. So we held our election night party at the Prince in Koreatown. And of course, one of the first results came in. It was a very exciting moment. 67% was the initial number. It later dropped down to about 65. We only needed 50 plus 1. So we easily won the day. And it was a very, very exciting moment. So that's it. I'm happy to have a conversation, answer questions. You can follow us. We have a members club if you want to join. You can volunteer. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on email. Thank you so much. Go on.
I can take over now, or I can get involved now. Hello. Hello. They can hear me on the mic. Okay. Does anybody have questions? I'll go over here first. It's working for the live stream, so
Okay.
you'll have to speak up for people in the room to hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name's Emily. Thank you so much for your presentation, Michael.
As someone who also likes to bike everywhere, moving to LA has been kind of difficult because it feels really unsafe. So I just wanted to like get your perspective on how you don't experience like mental burnout in like kind of taking your bike out on the street and, like, with I guess the safety concerns, especially because you bike with your kids a lot. So just how do you deal with that?
So it's the number one reason why people don't bike in LA, because they're scared. LA, couple of things. Yes, we don't have very much what I would call safe infrastructure. We do have a decent grid of residential streets that mostly connect to each other. They're not blocked by a movie studio or a freeway. And so as you start to learn what connects to another, you can usually be on not major streets to get to where you're going. The other thing I would suggest is, even if you're physically fit and don't need an e-bike, to consider one, because if you get a class 3 e-bike and you're going up to 28 miles per hour, when the light turns green, now you're not holding up cars, that's safer for you. And when the speed difference, not everyone of course drives the speed limit, but if the speed limit's 35 and you're going 28, that's a very small difference. It's much, much safer for you. Third, I would take the lane. If you have to be on a busy street, I don't believe most people will try to kill you if they see you. And so I rather piss someone off and slow them down by being in front of them than being on the right-hand side between them and car doors that may open and hoping that I make it. And so it's a combination of being defensive, being going on the offense when you need to, being on side streets, and maybe upgrading your setup to be closer to the speed of traffic. That's how I survived. Oh, and a horn.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Question back here. Here you go.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Thank you for being here. My name is Josue Hervey. I'm a first-year MERP student, and I have a couple questions for you. One is, just based off the slides and videos you showed us, it seemed like there was such an overwhelming, great response for Measure HLA. But then I recently kind of have seen not opposition, but just lack of implementation from Metro. So can you tell us where that divide is? How it seemed like such a great idea, but now that it's actually signed off, it's like, okay, why isn't anything happening? Quick second question is, just based on all the work you guys do, and I just want your opinion on this, how do you think 2028 Olympics will be? Do you think it'll be a great time period for Angelenos to be like, oh wow, this is how LA could be? Or do you think it'll be like a shit, we really fucked up, nothing's happening, we're back to even more traffic? Thank you.
So in 1984, when LA last hosted the Olympics, we had bus lanes everywhere that disappeared the day after the Olympics. I do think this year will be different. Number one, our metro system, as you guys probably know, is about to expand in a very significant way. You're about to have a stop at Wilshire and Westwood, and you're going to be able to go downtown in about 20 minutes. That's a huge change for LA. And so the rail investments we're making obviously will stay long after the Olympics. But I don't see any evidence that the city of Los Angeles is in any way prepared for the Olympics. We are continuing to scale back funding for streets, not increase it. Our pavement condition index is supposed to go from 60 to 56. That's a 4% drop in 1 year. 100 is a perfectly paved street. 0 is basically a hole in the ground. And so when you have a 4% drop in 1 year, you can do the math. It doesn't take very many years before the streets look terrible. We have in no way fixing our sidewalks. Look, I think for most visitors of LA, they're just assuming they're going to drive places and they'll Uber and Lyft and Waymo and they'll figure it out. But I don't think LA is currently, let me be fair. There's a couple projects in the Olympics that I think are interesting. The protected bike lanes on Ohio, going from Westwood Boulevard to the other side of the 405, that's meaningful. Pico Boulevard is probably the biggest one. They're going to put protected bike lanes on Pico from Crenshaw to downtown. That's a nice long stretch. There's one near State Historic Park in downtown on Alameda. So there's a few good things going on. But in general, no, I don't think the city's doing a good job getting ready. As far as your first question, I have no idea. If you were a politician and something passed with 2/3, you would assume when you run for re-election, you would lean into that. You get excited about it. There are some people that are excited at city council. Unfortunately, it comes at a time when our city is so broke that the political will is almost irrelevant. I don't think people understand how broke the city is inside. Last year, there was $1 billion budget deficit. They barely avoided layoffs, but they cut services to the bone. This year, we have another billion budget deficit. So we're cutting even more. I mean, I don't know if it's going to get to the point where trash is going to get picked up once every 2 weeks instead of every week, or streetlights already take 2 years to fix and sidewalks take 10 years to fix. So I think absent more money or reprioritizing how we spend our money, I think HLA will happen because it's the law, but it might take a lot longer than we would like.
Hello, I'm Ezekiel Espiricueta. I'm also a first-year MERP student. Thank you for presenting. I've been following Streets for All, and it's exciting to have you here. For me, I'm from Southeast LA, so like the cities of Bell and Maywood, and the Hill to Sea project. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's great." My only question is, how has it been coordinating with different jurisdictions? Because there's so much cities and counties, and like through that area. And how has that process been for y'all?
So Pico Rivera, gung ho, really wants this project yesterday. Long Beach wants the project. Pasadena doesn't want a bus lane inside Pasadena. So to answer your question, I want to say it's 13 cities, if I'm not mistaken, and some unincorporated county in there. Half of them are probably on board. The other half need some work, or they're willing to do ticky-tack stuff. Like they're willing to synchronize lights for the buses, but not willing to put in a full lane. So it's a mix.
I guess additional question: how can, as we involved with like environmental justice groups in that area, how can we support that project, like moving it forward? Advocating for it.
I mean, I have a list of the cities that are more hesitant than others. If you can find, if you can find people in those cities to call their council members and say, "I like this,"
yeah,
that's the single most meaningful thing you could do.
That'd be great.
You're welcome to contact me. I'll give you the list.
And for anybody who's unfamiliar with what MERP means, it's a master's degree in urban and regional planning that UCLA offers. So we have several students.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for being here. My name is Ella Coffey. I'm a third-year undergraduate student. And I was wondering what your stance on the prominence of autonomous vehicles in the streets is.
So I had a personal experience about 2 months ago. I was riding with my 5-year-old. She was on her own bike. We were on our street, residential street. And I see in my rearview mirror that there's a car behind her, and I look and it's a Waymo. And I immediately relaxed. The Waymo wasn't texting while driving, wasn't honking, wasn't impatient, wasn't trying to go around her. It just chilled and went at her speed. And I kind of already knew, like, a robot, if you think about it, it's just going to be safer than a human. It's not going to make the same mistakes, not going to be distracted. But that showed me that it's absolutely true. The numbers are astounding. I want to say there's a 94% decrease, something like that, in crashes compared to human drivers. I don't know if any of you saw the video. I think it was yesterday. There was a Waymo in Echo Park, and it looked like it was off-road racing, and it hit 2 cars, and it was going crazy. Guess what? It was being driven by a human test driver. That's the only time I've ever seen a Waymo get into any sort of crash, is when a human was behind the wheel. I will say, biking throughout the city, I wish I could write tickets for texting while you're driving, because I'm at the perfect eye level to see someone's hands and what they're doing. And usually it's one hand on the wheel and one hand like this on their phone. And I think, knock on wood, if I'm ever hit by a car one day, it's not going to be intentional. It's going to be someone was texting their friend and just wasn't paying attention. And so for me, Waymo solved that problem. If you think about it, I think if the whole transportation system was autonomous, you'd probably be a lot safer out there as a pedestrian or cyclist. So
Right.
I'm for it.
Glad to know you haven't been hit yet.
That's not, well, it's actually not entirely true. It wasn't a serious one, but I was on my bike. I was on a call during the HLA campaign trying to convince a state senator's office to write a letter of support for HLA. And out of a movie, while I'm on that call, I was crossing Beverly Boulevard in West Hollywood, and a guy made a left turn into me. Thankfully, he was going very slow, and my bike kind of got wedged in his mirror. I didn't even fall, and it was very minor. But I guess technically I have been hit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Hello, Michael. My name is Solbok, first year in Master's in Urban Planning program, and I'm currently a resident in Little Tokyo Arts District area. I've been living there for the last almost 6 years. And right next to Skid Row, you can kind of guess the overall environment, especially for pedestrians and bicycle riders. Despite having the metro station recently opened and then revitalization of the Little Tokyo, there has been a steep a kind of disconnection between communities. And I feel like there has been a number of projects there. There was a new bike lane opened a few years ago. However, the overall bike riders actually almost decreased, especially during the COVID. And also, as a pedestrian there, I do not feel safer. And I feel like there are other factors on top of building bike lanes or some of the transit projects. What do you think is other bigger factor for the pedestrian safety or bike rider safety?
Are you asking me how to deal with the homelessness situation in terms of the safety of bike riders and pedestrians?
Not necessarily a homeless situation, but just overall in general, what other bigger factors are there that could hinder the pedestrian, well, specifically pedestrian safety and the perceptiveness in how to walk or bike in neighborhoods?
I mean, the biggest factor by far are cars. Like, take it all combined, your odds of getting hit by a car crossing the street in LA are 3 times the national average. It's insane. So it is the cars, and it is distracted drivers. Of course, those other elements, we live in a complex society, complex times, and really feeling they're not insurmountable, but very challenging problems to deal with. LA 3-4 years ago put in a protected bike lane with concrete curbs, its first one on 7th Street. And it goes through Skid Row.
Mm-hmm.
When I bike off into the Arts District and I have to go that way. I don't use that bike lane because there are people in it, there are tents in it, there's shopping carts in it. It's more dangerous for me to use the protected bike lane than it is to just go in the travel lane for cars. So obviously this is all connected and it's a very complex problem. But still, the overriding risk is simply cars.
Thank you.
Do others have questions? Sure, over here.
Hi, my name is Alana. I too am a first-year student, urban planning. I ride my bike to school almost every day, and I recently got an e-bike. It does make a big difference, especially when you're at a red light and you can accelerate very quickly. I'm curious, and I came in kind of towards the end, so apologies if you already answered this. I can go watch the recording. But in your advocacy for safe streets for all and for promoting like more alternative modes of transportation, such as biking, I'm curious your perspective on what comes first. Is it like advocacy and mobilization to get more people to bike and change their behaviors, and then because people want to change their behaviors, then the funding comes afterwards and like private sector promotes and pays for some of the infrastructure as well? Or is it more the other way around? Is it that, yeah, we need the funding first, we need to build the infrastructure, and then the people will come? And I know there's nuance to that, like a lot of it has to go hand in hand, but like in your work, like, do you lean more one way towards or the other?
Well, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? The answer, this is probably not that satisfying, but of course it's both. The reason we did the culture change videos without having a protected bike lane network is to show people that even with our kind of crappy streets and infrastructure, you can still get around and be safe and go where you need to go. At the same time, the number one thing that's lacking, given our weather, does anyone know the average trip in LA every day, how short it is? Maybe you've heard these stats. 3 miles. 50% of trips every day are 3 miles or less. So let's say that a different way. Half the cars could go away if people took a 15-minute or less bike ride. That's astounding to think about. 2/3 are 5 miles or less. So when I first started doing this work, someone's like, oh, this isn't Amsterdam. This isn't like, this is LA. It's unique. It's too big. Well, yeah, if you live in Northridge and you work in Long Beach, it's too big to ride a bike to work. Most people don't do that. Most people have shorter trips around near where they live, and they're driving for all of them. So I think both have to happen at the same time. Of course, the more infrastructure we build, the more it's going to attract people, especially people that are scared. My wife's a good example. She's curious, but scared. She rides with me a lot, but if I'm not there, she seldom rides on her own just because she's scared of cars. Of course, there's no difference to her safety if I'm next to her or not, but that's the way she feels. And so we need to build the infrastructure. We need to get people out there, even in the shitty infrastructure today, using it. And the both have to happen at the same time to eventually reach a point. Who's been to a ciclovia here? Okay. Well, for those of you that aren't raising your hands, you should go. But it's very inspiring. It's tens of thousands of Angelenos out there riding their bike. You want to know what most of those bikes do during the week? They collect dust in someone's garage or living room because they're too scared to use them. So given our weather, given the average trip, all the elements are there. We need the infrastructure. I'm glad you got an e-bike. I think e-bikes are a huge unlock into getting curious but scared people a little bit less scared, because they just are so much safer in the maneuverability and the speed they go compared to cars.
Yeah. So I had a question about the kind of strategy of your organization, and what really struck me and was fascinating just to see how kind of like unashamedly political you are, right? You're kind of like doing like hit ads on like council members and really leaning into the politics, which I think is pretty unusual in the streets advocacy space. I think a lot of your counterparts in other cities tend to be more like policy wonks, and they're writing kind of reports and doing analysis and trying to partner with the city. And so I'd love to hear you say more about like kind of the relative kind of returns on investment or like gains from like those different courses of action, and why you went the politics rather than the wonky route.
Well, the wonky route wasn't getting it done. I mean, most organizations doing this work are 501c3s. They're not allowed to endorse. They're not allowed to tell you who to vote for. And asking nicely wasn't getting it done. And so what choice do you have? You can come up with all the best policy in the world, but if the politician isn't willing to stick their neck out and implement it, it just doesn't matter. I will say one thing, the CBO, community-based organization apparatus in LA, where LADOT and Metro hire nonprofits, and frankly, some of them, that's the majority of their revenue. How can you be critical of an organization that pays you? It's very difficult. Sometimes LADOT gives us contracts and we're like, look, we're not going to change our opinion. So as long as you're cool with that, we'll take the money and we'll help you promote your project, but we're not for sale. And unfortunately, a lot of the nonprofits here are for sale, and they aren't able, because of their legal structure, to endorse. I'll say one more thing. If you help someone win an election, they remember that forever. The reason Streets for All has the relationships it does on city council is because we were a critical part of their rise and their win. And so now they come to us for policy advice. But you have to get your foot in the door, and you have to get your candidate elected first before you can be in a position to influence policy with someone who's already in office. Once they're already in office, if they don't share these values, very difficult to change their mind.
Interesting. Hi there. First, thanks for the presentation. So you mentioned kind of anecdotally in some of your campaigning that you embraced the pedestrian experience more than maybe the biking or transit riding experience, because everyone's a pedestrian. I'm curious, do you have other examples of cases where you embraced messaging that worked, and then have there been messages that didn't work and didn't resonate as well?
I think I was less diplomatic when I first started Streets for All. I was more militant about it. I was pissed. But I don't think that necessarily, so I think a mistake we made early on is we assumed everybody wanted what we wanted and was already in the mindset that we were in, and therefore like, fuck the car, and it just doesn't convince people. It doesn't work well. Measure M and Measure R, which are our two county transportation sales tax increases that have been passed over the last 15 years. If you look at the campaign, they needed 2/3 both times of a county-wide vote. That's hard. LA City is progressive on this stuff, but if you go out to Palmdale, it's a different story. And so the way they did it, someone told me, we never let the mayor be on a bicycle. We never talked about buses. We talked about a traffic reduction because other people would use these other solutions so you could drive your car faster and have an easier time parking. That's really effective. Frankly, we've used some of that same messaging, and it's not false. If you get someone out of their car, that's one less car taking up traffic and one less car that's competing for a parking space. But I think you have to some degree, meet people where they are. Now, there's also a subset of people that no matter what you do, how convincing you are, good at storytelling, data, they will never, ever be on your side. But I do think that's a minority. And I think the misperception that politicians make and others is that those people are the majority. They're not. They just were yelling the loudest and no one was yelling back. And now there is someone.
Hey, Michael, Josue again. I currently reside in Palms. I've been there for almost 2 years now. And one of the biggest factors that got my wife and I to move out there was the proximity to Culver City and their bus, bike, and traffic lane. We enjoyed it, biking all the way up to like Cliffs of Id to rock climb. My wife works in Hayden Tract area. And then 6 months later, they scrubbed out the entire bike lane. And I was just kind of confused because I know we also had an ally, Bubba Fish, on the council as well.
He wasn't on the council at the time.
Oh, that makes so much more sense then. So I do have a question for that though, is what are your thoughts on bike lanes being implemented in areas that some folks may look at as an early onset of gentrification? So I know other places where traffic, pedestrian deaths is higher, like South Central, especially near Slauson Avenue. People think, oh, if you put a bike lane here, like they're going to open up another Starbucks. There's going to be a farmer's market. So what are your thoughts on bike lanes equating to gentrification?
It's a really important question because I remember having a conversation with a group in South LA on Zoom. And I think I was advocating for a bike lane on the street. And someone said to me, why are you trying to take away my car? And I said, I'm not trying to take away your car. I'm trying to give people options. And they brought up the gentrification argument. If you look at Vision Zero and the high injury corridors and where the most dangerous streets are, they're in South LA. They're in the Valley. They're in less advantaged parts of Los Angeles. And so you kind of have to choose. Do bike lanes lead to gentrification? I'm not convinced of that. But even if they tip the scales in that direction, the road safety element is so critical. South LA, I think, is 4 times as dangerous as the West Side. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so these things save lives. And to me, if I have to choose between making an area a little bit nicer and slightly increasing property values, if that's true, compared to someone losing their life, I think I'd rather go in that direction. You kind of have to pick. Going back to the move Culver City question, Bubba Fish was one of our first steering committee members at Streets for All. And he ran his election partly on Move Culver City. And you probably know this living there. But I want to say a month before the election, they rushed to rip that out just in case he won. And he did win. So after he won, I called him and I said, okay, are you going to put it back in? Like, what's the story? And he's trying to figure it out. I think if you push too hard, too fast, you do risk a backlash. And so I think that bike lane will probably eventually come back. I've ridden in the shared bike bus lanes. I actually don't mind them because buses aren't that frequent and I've got all this space now, but I know it's not an 8 to 80 facility where like a small child would use it on their own compared to a protected bike lane. But yeah, Culver City is a very interesting example where data didn't matter. What mattered was the perception that the bike lanes were causing traffic through downtown, and so they had to go.
A lot of folks saying that bike lanes cause businesses to lose money. The biggest contention was businesses were losing money because of the bike lanes, and then they took the bike lanes out, but yet a lot of restaurants and businesses in Culver City to this day are closing down, like Shake Shack, Monty's Good Burger.
It's complete nonsense. Like the idea that a bike lane is bad for business, especially for a restaurant. People often don't go to somewhere because they don't want to deal with the parking around the place. So if you can just walk and park right in front and walk in, I mean, restaurants, coffee shops, yoga studios. I mean, there's so many examples of businesses that benefit from bike lanes. Maybe if you're an auto dealership, you don't. But I think in general, bikes are good for business. We've seen case studies all across the country where they put in a bike lane, it was opposed by businesses, and then it was embraced. One of the most biggest transformations in the world right now is on Oxford Street in London. And the mayor is pushing to pedestrianize it. It's one of the main thoroughfares. It's a big, big deal, even in Europe, which is more progressive with this stuff. And the businesses, because of evidence from other cities where pedestrianization has increased revenue, are actually on board. So this key thoroughfare of London is about to be a huge pedestrian mall. So I just think we keep showing evidence. The one in Culver City wasn't evidence-based. It was emotional.
Thank you. That's enough for me. Appreciate you.
Does anybody else have a question? Okay.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, I did step in. I was here a little bit late, so I apologize if my question has already been covered in your presentation. I'm happy to go back as well. I guess it's a little bit to Josue's point here. A lot of backlash, and we see this in politics all the time. It is going to not be necessarily evidence-based. It's going to be feelings or perception. How do we as advocates try to get ahead of that backlash? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but given that we are, as a cyclist in LA, I can see the yawning gaps in how we, it's feeling very unsafe as a cyclist, but I can also appreciate that the city has put quite a bit of investment in infrastructure and has dedicated space for us that didn't exist 20 years ago. And so as we take more and more space, as we take parking spaces on major thoroughfares, how do we get ahead of that kind of backlash?
I think the great storytelling, honestly. I think, so let's take the business example, the bike lane's killing my business. You can find business owners, and they did during the campaign, Bike Culver City did. They can go on record and say, this bike lane's great. People come in for lunch more because they're not fighting for a parking space. I think through some data, but more storytelling, speaking to that emotion of the issue, I think you can get people over the hump. I just think bike lanes, for whatever reason, immediately it's like someone goes from a 0 to a 10 and they're just pissed. Over their dead body, you're going to change their community and put in a bike lane. And it's the weirdest thing. It's really an odd thing. And the only thing I could think of is that for about 80 years, everyone in LA is told you need to drive. And that's why people are so precious about parking spaces, because obviously if you need to drive, you need to park somewhere when you get there. And so the only way to kind of loosen Motordom's grip over people's psyche that you have to drive and preserve parking at all costs and all this stuff is by giving them options. The subway that's about to open under Wilshire Boulevard is a huge deal. For the first time, it's going through some of the wealthiest parts of the city. And for the first time, when I was on the neighborhood council, someone came, they were trying to build a 18-story high-rise taking place of a Staples in Miracle Mile on Wilshire. And half the board was saying, you're building luxury apartments and no one's going to use the train, and you're asking for no parking because it's a block from the train station, but no one who spends $15,000 a month is ever going to ride the train. And I just think, like, the richest people I know value their time the most. And if you can get to a Laker game on a Friday night in 15 minutes versus an hour in the car, I have to believe that some of those, no matter how much money or little money you have, why not take the train? It's just so much better. And so I think the train is a huge shift in that mindset. I will say something I've learned, if a street is 2 lanes in each direction and then it has parking and something has to go to make space for a bike lane, focus on the travel lanes, not the parking. For whatever reason, people still have like a grip over parking even more than being stuck in traffic.
I think, I think we're out of time for questions, but I think also speaking about parking is a great way to close. And Adam already brought up that UCLA started a center on parking policy to extend what Professor Shoup, the late Professor Shoup, has been doing with engaging cities, states, really anybody who's interested on the topic of parking policy. So thank you, Michael. I learned more. I think I've been following Streets for All from afar for a while as somebody who was, I did a group bike ride to the airport in like 2012 with some people who were going for their honeymoon and stuff. And I was like, it was not sped up at all that. Oh, it was, I'm sure it's gotten better since 2019.
No.
Okay. Well, then it may have been the same then as it is today. It wasn't pleasant. But I appreciate you coming and sharing, because the work that Streets for All and you have been doing, I think, has been an important part of LA transportation movement in the past decade or so.
And Juan, you mentioned Professor Shoup. I just want to let everyone know he was our guest on Happy Hour. It was on Zoom maybe 4 years ago. So if you're curious, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch it, but it was great. I miss him.
Yeah. And so we have a few more of these lectures in this series we're doing. Thank you. Yeah, can you? So as Adam Millerball mentioned at the beginning, we are trying to
showcase Los Angeles's transportation past, present, and future. We're in the winter quarter, so we're showcasing the present. We'll be announcing the spring quarter series soon. But upcoming in winter quarter, we have on February 4th, Salita Reynolds, who's the Chief Innovation Officer, Strategic Innovation Officer for Los Angeles Metro. She'll give her perspective and approach to innovation in Los Angeles as it prepares its transportation system to host global mega events, especially the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2028.
I know my time speaking is over, but ask her about congestion pricing when she comes.
Yeah, I think there are perhaps people in the room who might ask that question. And then on February 11th, we have From the Viewpoint of A. Walker with Alyssa Walker, who is a journalist who covers Los Angeles and transportation and cities more broadly from an urbanist lens. And she also walks, so she'll be sharing both pedestrian observations, but perhaps perspectives as a journalist. February 18th, we have Jessica Meany on investing in sidewalks and streets. Jessica Meany, if you don't know her, has been working behind the scenes on a lot of the ideas that may or may not be operationalized in a charter reform movement about how to organize the city of LA to deliver on its transportation system. And then on March 11th, we'll have Joshua Schenk, former Chief Innovation Officer with LA Metro and now a senior fellow with UCLA Institute of Transportation Studies, who will speak from his forthcoming book, New Tricks for Old Bureaucracies. All of these lectures will take place in Engineering 6, room 134 here on the UCLA campus, as well as on YouTube. And if you have any questions about this, to learn more about our programming, you can both visit our YouTube channel, but then also visit its.ucla.edu to learn more about the various things that we have happening. Appreciate everybody for joining us today and look forward to seeing you all in the next one.